Hello and welcome to Lesson 3, Warping to Heddles. This is the Epically Creative Weaving course. We're in Module 4 and I am Amy D. McKnight. In this lesson you will learn how to direct warp a loom for 2 Heddle weaving with 2 colors, how to direct warp the Heddles and bring them to the loom, and how to thread the Heddles for double weave. All right, ways to warp 2 Heddles. There are a couple of ways to warp a loom for weaving with 2 Heddles. You can use a warping board, that would be the indirect method, or you can use a warping peg or a warping board in the hybrid method and directly warp the loom and the Heddle and everything at the same time. I'm going to be teaching you the direct and the off the loom hybrid method. So if you're comfortable using a warping board, then the off the loom hybrid method is the method that you might want to consider using. I'm going to start out though with the direct warping, warping a loom for 2 Heddles. So pretty much we're going to do what you're probably used to doing anyway. So this method is the method that you use to warp your loom. It's the same method that I showed you in Module 1 when I was direct warping the Becca loom, and it's pretty straightforward. The only real difference is that you're going to be using 2 colored threads held together as opposed to just a single thread, because we're going to be pulling 4 threads through the slot. So each slot's going to have 4 warp threads passing through them. I'm going to be using a warping peg in the demonstration that you'll see after this video, but you can always use the warping board in the hybrid method that I like to generally use if I'm going to be doing a longer warp. So if you're using an Ashford, Kromsky, and any other loom that has a 2 Heddle setup. So if you already have a double Heddle block that allows you to have the 2 Heddles in place, or if you're using clamps to hold your Heddle in place to warp that second Heddle on a loom, you're going to simply wind the warp onto the back beam and follow the standard procedure. So pretty much what I'm saying is that if you have space for 2 Heddles on your loom, you're going to warp that first Heddle, you're going to wind onto the back beam, and then you're going to proceed to warp the second Heddle. So if you want to slay a second Heddle and then wind on, then you can do this off the loom, and you can, you're going to want to leave yourself a little bit extra room behind the Heddle to be able to easily get your hand in between there, so it's less stress. So you're going to start out by cutting the warp after you've gotten it all wound on. This is if you're going to be doing the off the loom method. And then if you're not using a Becca that comes with the Heddle holders, you're going to need some clamps to hold your Heddles up while you warp your loom. You're going to need 4 of them, 2 for each of your Heddles, just so they'll stay stable. This method I'm showing you right now, this is really useful for those who are using cricket looms because they don't really have a place for a second Heddle. So this allows you to be able to warp that second Heddle and give you some good space so you're not feeling so cramped using the loom. If you want some more information about that, just go ahead to go to Module 1, Lesson 3, where I use the Ashford Heddle and a warping board so that you'll be able to see how that's done. All right, I want you to remember again to give yourself a generous amount of warp behind the Heddle so that you can easily thread the second Heddle and tie onto the back beam. All right, so after we've gotten the first Heddle warped with 4 strands in each of the slots, now it's time to get that first Heddle, those threads moved around so that you're going to be able to proceed to doing double weave. So once you've threaded that first Heddle with the 4 threads in each slot, it's time to move the threads around a little bit in preparation to thread the second Heddle. If you haven't already, go ahead and cut the loop at the end and make sure that you have, again, a generous amount of warp available for the second Heddle. I keep repeating this because it's a real pain to be threading, and then because you don't have enough warp coming out the back or for you to work with, that you're at risk of pulling the threads back through. That's just like no fun whatsoever. So we want to avoid that, and we avoid that by making sure we have a good amount of warp behind us. So you got in this picture right here, this is the warp that's going to be to the front of the loom. This is going to be tied onto the back beam. There's a good amount of warp right here so that when I put up the second heddle, I'm not going to have to really kind of be careful not to have the threads go back through and unthread itself, unwarp itself. All right, so at this point, you should have 4 warp ends going through each of the slots. You're going to start on the right side as you face the back of the heddle, and you're going to take one of the ends from the first group of 4 warp ends in the slot. And you're going to put that in through the hole to the right of it. So you're going to pull it out so there are only 3 ends in the slot, and you're going to thread the end that you just pulled out to the hole that's to its right. You're going to repeat this across. It's super simple. Pretty much just taking out one of the threads and putting it in the hole to the right and just keep it moving. Now, if you're threading for double cloth or double width with 2 colors, be sure to put the same color thread in all the holes if that's important for you. If you, like me, like to make it kind of interesting, just do some random stuff. It's not going to make that big a deal. It's kind of cool how it works out in the end. If you don't like those type of surprises, put the same color in the holes all the way across. Now, again, just said that. So you're going to have 3 ends in a slot, 1 in the hole across. Here's how you're going to thread that second heddle. So the last heddle, we have 3 of the warp threads in the slot and 1 thread in the hole. I want you to regroup those things back in your mind so that you consider them a group of 4, because each of the group of 4 has a role to play. All right, so think that they're all back together and we're using them as a group of 4. We're going to start on the right side with a thread that's in the hole in the back heddle that we just threaded. Now, it's going to be useful for you to mark your heddles so that you know where you're going. If it's off a little bit, that's fine, but if it's off too much, then your heddles are not going to line up properly, especially if you're using a Becca. If you're using a loom that has positions for you to position the heddle, it should be fine, but still it's going to be a little bit wonky if you don't kind of line your threads up and have them passing where they're supposed to. So we're going to thread that thread that was in that first hole in the back heddle into the slot that is to the right of the corresponding hole in the front heddle. Let me say that again. We're going to thread the thread that was in the hole in the back heddle, that first thread that was in the hole. We're going to thread it into the corresponding slot that is to the right of the same hole that's in the front heddle. Now we're going to take our bundle of 3, those 3 that were in the slot beside the hole at the back heddle. And this is where we're going to put each of those. This is where they all belong. We're going to take the first of the bundle of 3 and put it in the slot with that hole thread. We're going to put them 2 together. We're going to take the next one and we're going to put it in the hole to the left of the slot with those 2 threads. And then we're going to take that last thread and we're going to put it in the slot to the left of the hole that we just threaded. This first group, this first starting group, is going to have 2 threads in the far right slot, and it's going to be the one of the exceptions. The last group of 4 is going to have 1 thread in the far left slot. So the first group of 4 and the last group of 4 are the exceptions. All the other slots will have 3 threads. Now, note, this is important. If you start from left to right, then it's going to be the opposite. So just keep that in mind. If you're threading from left to right, you're going to have the opposite be true. I'm going from right to left. Just so that if you understand you've done it and it's a different way, it's just that you thread in a different direction. All right, let's do the next set. We have a hole thread and 3 slot threads, right? So the hole thread is going to go in the same slot as the last slot thread from the previous group. Now we're going to take our bundle of 3, and this is where each of them belong, with the whole thread and the slot thread from the previous group, through the hole to the left of that group of 3, and then the slot to the left of the hole. So each slot has 3 threads, and they are a thread from the previous group, a whole thread from the current group, a slot thread from the current group. Warning. So when you're warping for 2 different layers of color, when weaving double weave, you're going to want to make sure that you are placing the slot thread in the following manner. The slot thread of the same color as the whole thread with the slot thread of the same color as the whole thread with the whole thread. That could be kind of twisting. So you're going to take the slot thread that matches the whole thread from the back heddle and put them together in the same slot. All right? And that will ensure that you've got your colors are going to be together as you are warping. This is true whether you're warping solid color across or if you have bars of colors going across. You want to put them together like that, and then you'll have your bands the way you want them. You want to put the slot thread of the different color into the hole, and then the remaining slot thread in the empty slot to the left of the hole, you're going to use the same color as the thread that's in the hole. So threading the colors in the above manner ensures that they are in the correct places when you pick up the threads on your pickup stick. More on that later. When you're warping for fine cloth, you do need to take care to keep the threads from crossing between the heddle, but as long as each bundle of 3 is in a slot with a whole thread, a hole, and a slot, you're fine. So you're going to find an over my shoulder video of me warping after this lesson. It's going to be labeled Warping Double Heddles. So in this lesson, you learned how to direct warp a loom for 2 heddle weaving. I also talked to you about how to direct warp the heddles and bring them to the loom. And then I talked about how to thread the heddles for double weave. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and take action now. Warp along with me as I prepare 2 looms for 2 heddle weaving. And join my community if you haven't already, or get on the wait list if the community isn't open right now. There are a lot of different membership levels, and we have some really cool study groups in there that will allow you to interact with others who are learning to do this particular skill together. It's kind of fun. All right, y'all. So I want you to, if you haven't already, download the Beyond Basics game board. It's super fun. It's available in color and in a non-colored version. So you can save on some ink if you don't want the pretty pink version of this. And then hashtag creative double weaving on your social. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment, subscribe to this channel, and ring the notification bell so you'll know when I upload new videos. Share this video. There aren't that many publicly available videos like this out there, so go ahead and share it. Sharing is caring. In the next lesson, you're going to learn why you want to use 2 heddles to weave fine and lightweight cloth, how to weave with 2 heddles as one, and some places to find ideas and inspiration for your weaving. Alrighty, y'all. I will see you in the next video.